Jerry had served on this council for nearly 30 years, I think. And now going to ask you all to stand for 1 minute in memory of Jerry. Thank you all, thanks. I said, there will be a chance for members to pay their respects shortly. I've said when we get to item 4, if that's okay with everybody. So I'll start the meeting proper. Item 1, apologies for absence. Today we've got Joe Birkin and Susie Cornwall.
Yes, Chair, we've also received apologies from Councillor P. Jones and Councillor W. Jones.
Any other apologies?
Councillor Clegg, Chair. Also Councillor Higgins.
Councillors Liggett and Rowe.
Councillor Liggett and Rowe, thanks for that. Alex.
In addition to those named, Councillor Pat Ancliffe, Councillor Mark Foster and Councillor Kevin Tate. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that. Does Tony, oh, so it's Tony Lacey's name, but it's gone. If that's all the apologies, thanks. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest and or other interests not already on their register of interests in any items on the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. None have been received in advance. Kevin?
There's the social housing regeneration scheme, and I don't think that will prevent any of the Ricknell members from taking part, but I also want to mention one for myself. Item 10, which is the motion. I've discussed it with the monitoring officer. It doesn't prevent me from taking part, but in fairness, full transparency, I live very close to one of the proposed lines that's on the map, as it were.
Thanks for that. I think we'll make a note of that. Martin?
Thank you, Chair. Just declaring item 7 that I'm a member of Ricknell Board, but intend to stay in the meeting but not participate.
Thank you. I'm going to move on then to item 3, minutes of the last meeting. I'm going to take the minutes of the annual council meeting first, separately from the other one, which was held on the 20th of May. Could we approve these as a correct record?
I'll move that. Second, Chair.
They moved and seconded. All those in favour, show of hands. Any against and any abstentions? Looks like 0-0. Thanks for that. The next item is to approve as a correct record and the chair to sign the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 20th of May. Could somebody move these as a correct record or not?
Second, Chair.
They moved and seconded. All those in favour? Thanks for that. Any against? No. Any abstentions? Thank you for that. We'll move on to item 4, which is the chair's announcements. And as I say, we've had the sad news about Jerry Morley and I'm sure people would like to say a few words about him. I think Nigel might be the first one who wished to come in.
Thank you. Things he wasn't afraid to speak his mind. I think it's fair to say that Jerry could divide opinions on certain things. He was Labour through and through, and he didn't mind who knew it. Like you say, up the Reds and down the Blues, that he would say probably a bit more forceful than that on occasions. As well as holding numerous roles on the council, he was a key member of our group. Above all else, Jerry lived and breathed Claycross. He was Mr. Claycross, serving its people for over 29 years on this council, and by anyone's standard, that's a massive commitment to public service. I think most people in Claycross knew or had heard about Jerry Morley. In fact, I think half the village had his windows fitted by him. Anyway, he came to a long tradition of Claycross councillors that included the likes of Pete Riggett and Dave Nuttall, and they've all left the mark on this council. But he wasn't just a member of North East Derbyshire, he was also a member of Claycross Parish Council and was its chair for many years. In those two capacities, he gave hours of his time for the community, often unseen by others, as we all appreciate. None so more than his time and energy put in the social centre, not just in the oversight of the building, but also putting in at the heart of the community. His pie and pea suppers were legendary, as were his weekly bingo nights. As far as I know, they got a waiting list to get on the pie and pea suppers. It's only now that he's no longer there that the real extent of what Jerry Morley did for Claycross will become apparent. I also know how immensely proud he was to have been elected as the chair of the council, and he would have brought his own unique style to that role. He said that it would be his last term at North East Derbyshire, and he was looking forward to being chair and to fulfilling its responsibility with Anne as his consort. He had many plans to help good causes in the district and be an ambassador for the council. It is a tragedy that he did not get to enjoy that. He will be greatly missed here at North East Derbyshire, and even more so in Claycross. So on behalf of the council and the Labour group, I would like to say thank you to him and his work and for all his public service. So, cheers, Jerry.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say on behalf of the Conservative group, we'd echo Nigel's comments and offer our thoughts and prayers and condolences to Jerry's family and his friends and all of you as Labour group colleagues. I know how bitterly the loss will be felt by all of you. I didn't know Jerry brilliantly well as a member, but I had a few interactions with him. And I think all I would say is I would absolutely agree with the championing Claycross point and the Mr. Claycross. I think we didn't always agree on town board, which was where I would probably see him the most. But you could tell he had a real passion for Claycross. He really did care about his community in such a strong way, and that really came across in everything that he did and said. So, yeah, really sad loss to the council as a whole and to Claycross. So, yeah, please do pass on our condolences.
Thanks for that, Alex. Next, I think Kathy from
Me?
Claycross
Yeah,
wants
okay,
to speak.
thank you. Right, this is just from the parish and myself. I was deeply saddened to learn of Jeff's passing. It is difficult to find words to adequately convey the sense of loss we all feel. Jeff wasn't only an exceptional colleague, but also a beacon of hope and kindness in our community. His dedication to our local community was truly remarkable, whether it was through his tireless voluntary work, his leadership in various local initiatives, or his unwavering support for those in need. Jeff always went above and beyond to make a difference. His generosity, compassion and commitment to bettering the lives of others have left an indelible mark on all who had the privilege of knowing him. At work, Jeff was more than just a colleague. He was a mentor and a friend. His infectious enthusiasm and positive spirit inspired us all to strive for excellence and to approach our challenges with a smile. His contributions to Claycross Parish Council were invaluable, and his absence will be profoundly missed. His legacy will continue to inspire us all. Sincere condolences to Jeff's family.
Thanks very much, Cathy, for that. Ross Shipman, I think was.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the Lib Dem Group, I want to pay tribute to Councillor Morley following his passing. Whilst we might not have agreed on much, what we did agree on is the importance of serving your community, and I admired him for the passion that he had for Claycross. There was no doubt that Councillor Morley was a big advocate for Claycross over the 29 years that he served. I had the pleasure of sitting on the what was the old audit committee with Councillor Morley, and whether it was Ricknell talking about a house in Dronfield, he somehow managed to bring it back to somebody in Claycross that needed a new kitchen, or if there was some roads being swept in Eckington, he definitely had a road in Claycross that also needed sweeping. But that's just who Jerry was. He always championed Claycross regardless of what the conversation was about, and he managed to always bring it back to champion the cause that was from Claycross. So on behalf of the Lib Dem Group, I just want to offer my condolences to Jerry's family, his friends, and obviously the Labour Group at this difficult time.
Thanks very much, Ross. Martin, do you want to comment?
Thank you, Chair. From a political perspective, I've known Councillor Morley for about 20 years. We served together on the Finance and Audit Scrutiny Committee, and he had at one time been chairman of that committee. Latterly, we served together on the board of Ricknell Homes. Councillor Morley wasn't known to be a shrinking violet, and he was certainly willing to share his views on a range of topics. He could be forgiven for being parochial from time to time, because, as we've heard, no one can doubt his passion for Claycross. His love of the town was evident when he attended meetings of the Claycross Town Board. His advocacy for Claycross residents was obvious in every interaction at relevant meetings, but more importantly, as a councillor representing Claycross North since 1995. Councillor Morley was also a long-serving member of Claycross Parish Council and chairman for many years. He was a true servant of that community who wanted to make a positive difference for everyone living there. But I also knew Jerry outside of the political forum. And yes, he did actually move outside of Claycross occasionally. I found him to be a genuinely caring person and someone who was willing to seek and receive advice. And in our interactions over a pint now and again, I began to realise we had respect for one another when Jerry said to me, "That's all right for a Tory." So I'm sorry that Councillor Morley won't be able to fulfil his time as chairman of the council. I know he wanted the role to serve as a platform to promote all that is positive about Claycross and this district. I will miss his quips and stories. And in my belief, Claycross has lost a genuine ambassador for the town. Rest in peace, Jerry.
Thank you, Martin. That's very nice. I think all the comments will be passed on to the family and condolences from everybody here at the council, and we hope that things go well for the family. Before the next item, before item 5, handing over to Nigel, I'm going to ask Sarah to say a few words, and she will explain the system again of voting and the intricacies of it to make sure that we've all got it. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. You've got a little note on your desk which tells you about using the microphones. It says that if you want to speak, you press the button on your microphone, it will light up and your name will appear in the queue. You do not need to press the button again, but the Chair will ask you to speak in the order in which you appear on the list. So it's very simple. You do not need to keep pressing the button. In terms of voting, when the vote is reached, the Chair will ask you to vote. The screen on your mic will show green for, red against and yellow abstain in relation to the motion. Press the screen itself for the vote you wish to cast and then you should appear on the board with a list of votes. But it's important to remember you're pressing the screen. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that. We'll try and follow the instructions, hopefully. We've been at it for a year. We might have got it right by now. I'll pass on to Nigel now for leaders' announcements and report. Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. And as some of you may be aware, there's just been a general election. I don't know if you have anybody missed that. So I'd like to start by congratulating our two new Labour MPs, Louise Jones for North East Derbyshire and Natalie Fleet in Bolsover. I want to thank the people of the district for electing both of them. Not that I'm biased, of course, when it comes to the outcome of elections. And I will look forward to working with them and the new Labour government during its first 5 years. I didn't know Mark Fletcher very well, but over the years I did work with Lee Rowley, especially at the Claycross Town Board, and I would like to thank both of them for the public service. Lee and I may not agree on many things when it comes to politics, especially over his government's attitude to local funding for local authorities, but I fully respected his commitment to North East Derbyshire. I'm sure the same can be said for Mark. As a public servants ourselves, we should acknowledge that commitment and thank them both for the work they did for their constituents. And I would wish them both well for the future and for their lives outside of politics. And that's genuine about Lee. Given the results recently, both nationally and locally, it does feel that we're entering a new era for local government. I believe that in general, and ambitious district councils like ours in particular can play a big part in helping to deliver the new government's agenda for change. Indeed, I would go further and say that we are critical to that success. I keep saying that we can't change things on our own, and so since the last meeting I have met with more stakeholders along with Lee to see how we can work together as partners to improve the lives of people in our district and work together to help tackle issues. Over the last few weeks, we've had productive meetings with the Police Chief Superintendent Dave Kirby, who runs the Police North Division, which includes North East Derbyshire, the CEO of the Derbyshire Chamber of Commerce, Scott Knowles, and MCA's lead for Housing and Land, Barry Cummins. And whilst over the next few months, I've got scheduled meetings with Derbyshire College, Derbyshire Law Centre and the Elm Foundation. I have also had fruitful meetings with both Claire Ward, the new Mayor, and Nicole, the new Police and Crime Commissioner. Last month saw this council's housing function inspected by the new social housing regulator. It was a thorough inspection, and for example, I spent 2 hours being interviewed by the inspectors, and once we have the published outcome, I will report back those findings to the council. Whilst on housing, I can report that the Whiteleys Avenue development is coming on nicely and looks great, apart from one aspect. Also, the scheme at Stonebroom is progressing well, and hopefully you will support the recommendations later in the meeting. Also, as some of you might be aware, I've been elected as the chair of the Derby and Derbyshire Strategic Leadership Board, which brings together and coordinates the work of all of the councils of the Derbyshire side on the East Midlands Combined Authority. Sadly, the leader of the County Council doesn't approve of my having that role, or of any district or borough leader having it for that matter, and so has withdrawn his council's funding for that body. However, rather than scuppering the whole process, it has only brought together all of the districts and boroughs with a renewed determination to make the SLB work and bring the prosperity investment into our communities that's been lacking for the last 14 years. When also taking into account what was set out last week in the King's speech, for the first time in a long time, I think things look positive. Personally, I'm really enthused by this, and I'm looking forward to this administration playing its role in making a positive difference here in North East Derbyshire for the people who live here. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that update, Nigel. There's a lot going off. Next item is item 6, public participation in accordance with the Council Procedure Rule number 8 to allow members of the public to ask questions about the Council's activities for a period of up to 15 minutes. The replies to any such questions will be given by the appropriate Cabinet member. Questions must be received in writing or email to the monitoring officer by 12 noon, 12 working days before the meeting. No questions have been submitted under Procedure Rule number 8 for this meeting, so we'll move straight on to item 7. Item 7, Social Housing Regeneration Scheme at Stonebroom. I believe Councillor Kerry is going to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek Council approval for borrowing to fund the replacement community centre as part of the wider regeneration scheme of Cleveland Road area at Stonebroom. Borrowing for the Stonebroom scheme was approved by this Council last November and didn't include the potential cost of redeveloping the community facility on the site, as further consultation and feasibility was required. This is now complete, and at its meeting on the 18th of July, the Cabinet agreed to proceed subject to approval of funding. The additional borrowing requirement is £650,000, bringing the total borrowing requirement for the scheme to 16.5 million. Approval of borrowing is not a delegated function to the Council in the Council's constitution, and therefore it is a decision for the Council. The implications of the additional borrowing required must be taken in light of the SITFA Prudential Code for Capital Finance. We must be satisfied the borrowing is prudent, affordable and sustainable, and the viability undertaken demonstrates that this scheme meets the requirements of this code. Should the borrowing be approved, the capital programme, borrowing limits and capital financing requirements will need to be increased along with the authorised limit and operational boundary for borrowing. I would like to move the recommendation that the Council approves the borrowing of £650,000 to fund the replacement community building as part of the wider regeneration scheme at Stonebroom. 2, that the Council approves the inclusion of this addition to the scheme in the HRA capital programme. And 3, that the Council approves the revised capital financing requirements, operational boundary, unauthorised limit as set out in the financial implications of this report. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Pat. Any questions or comments about this? I see Nigel Barkers wants to speak. Nigel?
Yeah, I just want to second that, and I think it'll be a bonus for Stonebroom to have this new community facility, and it does help with the regeneration. So yeah, I'll second what Pat's just moved. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Nigel. It's Charlotte.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just wanted to, as one of the local members, offer my strong support for this scheme, and also to thank Councillor Barker for engaging and involving the local community on this. It's undoubtedly going to be a period of massive upheaval, both in terms of the community facilities and also the wider redevelopment which we've discussed. But I think that the council so far has made a really positive contribution in terms of bringing the residents along and also making sure they know what's happening and when. And even last week, one of the elderly residents, their daughter was saying to me that it was a real positive and they were really looking forward actually to a new bungalow and to moving in the village as well. So yeah, and adding in the community facilities, obviously given the aim of what we're trying to do with the regeneration scheme at Stonebroom, the bungalows and sort of older residents that it will probably primarily accommodate is a real positive, because I know the previous use of the preschool and the community building, I know that's all to be worked out in the detail, but I know the previous use of the community building is something that they're really looking forward to being able to use again. So fully support this and thank you.
Okay, thanks, Charlotte. Anybody else wishing to speak on it? If not, as there's money involved, we need to take a formal vote using the electronic system. So now I believe we've got to press something on the screen. All those in favour? Have we all voted? It appears that there's 35 in favour, none against and no abstentions. I think I've got that right. If not, I know somebody will tell me. So that's passed, that's carried. Thanks for that. Right, so that was item 7. Item 8, Scrutiny Committee's Annual Report 2023-24. I believe you've all had a copy of this, and Mick Smith's going to speak to it. Mick, are you there? I can see you now. Have you got your microphone on? Or?
Thank you. Right, sorry about that. Yeah, happy to introduce this report that's been prepared. It's the report of all scrutinies for the year 2023 to 24. You've all received the report. Personally speaking, I've enjoyed the role, even with the support of all members across the parties. Look forward to working on it again and can open up for any questions if required, but just happy to move it.
No questions? Thought might be no comments, questions. If not, it's Mick's moved the report, and I think we just need to know. Oh, it's somebody which night. Neil Baker. Neil.
Thank you, Chair. I was sat on the Environment Scrutiny Committee, and the report mentions the motion for a 100% plant-based food within the council, but the minute, if you like, or the recommendation there doesn't concord with what I remember seeing take place. It seems very vague to me. Could I ask for a bit more clarity in such reports of what was actually agreed and recommend the actual recommendations that were put to council, please?
Are you moving something now, or asking? Are you asking that in future the minutes are more accurate?
I'd like council to know that I don't believe it's complete enough, and would like future reports to be more complete.
Okay, take your point, and we'll try and do that in future. Thanks for that. Alex.
Mine was more of a general comment. I don't know if you wanted the report to be second first, or whether you want to speak now. I'm happy to speak now. Okay. Sorry, yeah. Generally speaking, I think that the report shows that there's quite a comprehensive range of topics discussed at committee, which is good. You know, it's good to see lots of different issues being delved under. I think the feedback from our group when we discussed it certainly was that there is too much of a report was received at committee. You know, it doesn't seem to demonstrate as well as it could do how the council is scrutinising some of those issues. And I do worry, I know we've moved from a system of having deep dives and then smaller spotlight reviews at scrutiny to having lots more, no real big deep dives and then lots more smaller spotlight reviews, and there's merits behind that approach. But I think my concern is that we don't then end up getting under the skin of a particular issue, because you're dealing with one or two issues every meeting, and it changes between meetings. So you can't really get into the skin of an issue properly. So maybe there is a different balance between bigger reviews and the smaller reviews that we need to look at moving forward, so that you get that balance of having a range of topics but actually being able to really drill into them. Because otherwise scrutiny can't really perform that scrutiny role. If it's only receiving reports, it's not getting into the actual scrutiny of the issue, because it's not well understood enough by the members of the committee. I think is the key thing I would say. So.
Thanks for that, Alex. Try and take it on board. Caroline Smith.
Hi, thanks, Chair. I'd just like to come back on what Neil said, really, that I think, I don't know whether you're referring to the minutes of the environment scrutiny or the notes that we have in front of us, but the minutes were more detailed than what we've got coming to this meeting, and we did have a cabinet paper which did explain exactly what was said and what was agreed, and that has been agreed by the members of the Environment Committee. I think you maybe weren't on the committee at that point, and it has been passed by cabinet, so there is that information to read a bit more into the plant-based food motion. And just to kind of come back on what Alex said, I also feel, as a new chair of scrutiny, having not been on the council before, that we have done a lot of, like you said, looking at topics without actually being able to make too many recommendations, because we were too busy trying to find enough information to be able to study them. But certainly on the Environment Committee, I feel that we have had a brief overview of a few topics, and then we have invited the speakers back in this year to do a bit more of a deep dive on them. So hopefully we're not doing it in the same way all in 1 year as last time, but we are going to delve into them now. So hopefully that will sort of help with what you were saying we were missing. Thanks.
Thanks for that. Stephen Reid.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that could help, I know at the Business Scrutiny Committee, occasionally we'll come and get given the presentation straight away in that meeting, and we may not get the agenda, the notes or what is being presented as part of the agenda. What could help to make those meetings more productive is if we actually have, like we would with an agenda pack now with motions, at least a brief of what the presentation is or what the report is, so we can come prepared, having pre-read the material, to have informed questions that we can ask and save the officers' times at the same time from having to call them back to ask more questions at a future date. It just seems to be more productive to actually pre-plan that as opposed to being reactive.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm sure we can take that on board. Any other comments about this Scrutiny Committee annual report? If not, I will just ask if the council could note it. Are we all, a show of hands, all those in favour of noting it? Thanks for that. Any against? Any abstentions? No, I don't think so. Thanks for your comments then, quite useful, those. Move on to item 9, to answer any questions from members asked under Procedure Rule 9.2, in accordance with Procedure Rule 9.2, to allow members to ask questions about council activities. The replies to any such questions will be given by the Chair of the Council or the relevant committee or the appropriate Cabinet member. Question A, we've had a question from Charlotte, and I'll ask you if you want to put it.
Thank you, Chair. So can the Cabinet member, Councillor Barry, outline what the Council is doing to support start-up and incubator businesses in the district, and particularly in Claycross?
Get the right button in a bit. Thanks for the question, Charlotte. The Council ensures a breadth of entitlements and support is provided to our start-up and incubator businesses across the whole district. And this includes administering national schemes such as a small business rate relief, if a property's rateable value is less than 15,000, and supporting more local schemes, for example, through our UK Shared Prosperity Programme. We have extended our support of the Vision Derbyshire Startup Programme, which provides tailored one-to-one support for pre-start through the first year of trading and facilitates businesses showcase events for new startups. A grant for up to £10,000 is also available, which is match funded by 50%. We act as the lead council for the Derbyshire Accelerator programme, which allows new startups to access workshops on topics such as marketing and website development. We also have established a shopfront enhancement scheme offering grants of up to £10,000 to all commercial street-facing businesses and retail premises within the district, so ideal for those trying to set up premises for the first time. As a general principle, our departments do go the extra mile when it comes to providing advice, guidance and support to businesses regarding any specific queries and needs that they have. For example, they could include economic development team arranging and supporting, so they could do new startup business network meetings attended by Vision Derbyshire Startup, the British Business Bank and guest speakers who are now established businesses to give advice and guidance. And some new sector-specific business networks. Also local job fairs, which are free to attend for businesses wanting to advertise and discuss their vacancies. Free training to food businesses via environmental health. To help implement better commercial practice, our property and estates team has recently begun considering rent-free periods, which can be negotiated with tenants for fit-out costs, reducing turnaround in tenancies and also reducing the need for internal resources required to oversee and organise the works. We offer flexible leases on all our commercial estate, and at Coney Green we offer all-inclusive rents, which for starter businesses allows them to accurately budget at the inception of their venture. Also offering entitlement to a corporate membership, leisure membership, when a minimum of 5 employees sign up to the scheme, reducing the full membership from £30 to £25, which is a 17% saving. We ensure that wherever possible, our established new businesses access their entitlements for emergency support, such as during COVID-19 and Storm Babette. Regarding Clay Cross in particular, through the town deal, new startup businesses may be eligible for Low Carbon Challenge Fund grants of up to £10,000 and free energy efficiency advice from a specialist contractor to assist with more efficient running costs. We continue to work closely with the agencies such as the Chamber of Commerce and potential funding providers to ensure we can develop and harness emerging opportunities, whilst consulting with local businesses to identify their needs, such as through our current live survey, How's Business? We encourage any startup incubator businesses or individual thinking of taking this step to contact us to see how our departments and their partner agencies can help them further. I hope that fulfills your question.
Thanks for that, Jane. Did you want to ask any follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Barry for the reply. I think, noted what you've said, I guess the core question is, there's a lot of wraparound support there, but given the core question, can you explain why the new units, in particular, you mentioned the town deal on Bailey Square, which have been fully funded through the town deal, are turning start-up and incubator businesses away, apparently, and quoting quite high rents, so it's an explanation of that, but also asking for a commitment from you to take that away and review that concern locally.
Thanks for that follow-up. It's news to me, if that is the case. That's not been brought to me within my role as portfolio holder. My intentions, my understanding is that it is for start-ups and we're there to help and support them the best way that we can. I will go away and I'll speak to the relevant officers just to double check that, and I'll put that back in writing to you, Charlotte. Thank you.
Thanks for that. We'll move on to item 10, to consider any motions from members under Procedure Rule number 10. In accordance with the Council Procedure Rule number 10, to consider motions on notice from members. Motions must be received in writing or by email to the monitoring officer 12 working days before the meeting. I believe before we move into it, Sarah Sternberg would like to speak on it. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to express a concern I have, and that is that the Council may form a view and make a decision that they wish to object to the proposals, And I think this would be premature, as this is an informal consultation and we don't know all the details at this stage. It could be said to be fettering the council's discretion, that is, by taking a firm objection at this stage, putting the council in a position where it is very hard, if not impossible, to change its view on a formal consultation, and where this would mean it would be impossible to discuss and negotiate with National Grid the details of the proposals, thus removing the council's ability to influence the matter. So that's my concern, Chair.
So thanks for that bit of advice about the technicalities of it. It's a big and long consultation, I see, and this proposal from the National Grid, it's probably going to go on for years. If Charlotte wants to, would you like to move the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, I note the comments of the monitoring officer, but I think I guess just to reassure Council that actually this is the critical point at which to express a view as members. I think, I'm asking for the Council and this Council as a chamber to express a view and an objection, and I think we owe it to our communities to do so at this point rather than when it's too late and moves into a formal stage and then can't be changed. So just to start off in proposing this motion, I appreciate the proposals referenced within this motion may be more familiar to some members than others, so I just want to set out a brief context in relation to it. National Grid have announced plans to install an imposing new 400 kilowatt high voltage overhead line, which would be manned and accompanied by 50-metre high pylons from Chesterfield through to Willington. But for the purposes of our concern today, the route is currently proposed to come through North East Derbyshire, with particular impact on, and in no particular order, and apologies if I've missed any of the impact communities such as Calo, Heath, Homewood, North Wingfield, Lower Pilsley and Pilsley, Dainsmore, Handley, Stretton, Higham, Mickley, Sherland, and then on through the surrounding Amber Valley in the district. The spectre of that line would also cast a shadow over many more of the surrounding areas and villages in North East Derbyshire. Whilst I directly represent some of these communities who are very concerned, these proposals are of importance to all members here today. The majority of residents throughout our district at some point visit and enjoy all the areas I've just mentioned, and rightly so, but I would also reiterate to all members that we're all here to represent the entire district as well as our individual wards throughout the time that we serve. Moreover, if these proposals go ahead as currently drafted, the impacts and future reverberations will be felt across the district in the landscape character and then planning consequences they will lead to. Now, before I go into more detail on why the current proposals are of such concern to so many residents, I want to be clear this is not a referendum or debate on green energy or the need for the provision of electricity. The motion is clear in accepting the principle of an upgrade, and there are alternatives to achieve this, be it different routes or infrastructure, such as going underground for sections. In tabling this motion, I'm not therefore looking to open a discussion into national policy or politics in this regard. I'm happy to save that for another day, Councillor Parker. Rather, my focus and priority here is our district, our communities, and what this proposal in its current form would mean locally. As the motion outlines, one of the overriding concerns here is the way these massive 50-metre pylons would detract from and harm some of the most valued open spaces in our district. The character of the valley that surrounds Higham, Handley, Stretton, Dainsmore and Pilsley is that whilst they may be built up settlements, they are surrounded by open and rural countryside. This would no longer be the case with pylons almost as high as Nelson's Column marching through the fields and next to homes, enveloping and absorbing the previous open views and vistas of our countryside. If that's not scary enough in itself with the damage caused, I believe it would also have serious consequences for future planning applications for development, as the landscape could essentially sadly then have less protection with it. On a similar note, another significant concern of the proposed pylon route is the devastating impact it would have on some of our area's heritage assets and their settings. In particular, the beautiful Ogston Hall, which dates back to the 1500s and has been described as a fairy tale castle, the conservation area and many listed buildings of Higham, and just outside of our district, Wingfield Manor. We have a duty as members to protect all of these historic buildings for future generations, and as planning appeal decision after planning appeal decision has rightly shown, the settings that surround them are often as important as the buildings themselves, particularly to their historic context. Therefore, I'm not sure how anyone could argue that punching 50-metre high pylons into the valley that surrounds these, and almost towering above the turrets of Ogston Hall, could ever be considered to be preserving or enhancing this history. The cost of this new route along this line is too high. Over previous generations, we've already lost too many historic assets that we can't replace. With this, we wouldn't just lose the past, we'd also lose future economic growth and visitor economy. This district council, rightly, has always attached great importance to being the gateway to the Peak District and as a great taster of all the brilliant things in our county. But if our holiday lets, homes and tourist walks are surrounded by looming pylons, this would massively damage that attraction and deter future visitors and income. I've touched on a few of the big reasons there why the current proposed route is entirely unsuitable and would have catastrophic consequences there, but there are many more, which some other speakers may touch upon. As a final point, I want to highlight the sheer scale of concern and opposition locally, which transcends party politics here. There are already several large, entirely voluntary resident campaign groups in North East Derbyshire, as well as along the rest of the proposed line. I've been to 2 open resident meetings already, in Woollymore and in Higham, which were packed with hundreds of worried people, even on 2 quite stiflingly warm evenings. Every one of the residents I've spoken to on this has slightly different reasons for objecting, be it those mentioned above or others such as biodiversity, wildlife or health. They're all united, though, that this should not be our future. Therefore, I propose this motion to the Chamber with the aim of us endorsing for the Managing Director, on behalf of and with the backing of the Council, to lodge an objection to the proposal during this informal consultation stage and thereby send a unified message that these pylons stomping through some of our valued landscapes of our district are not appropriate and that National Grid need to look again. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Is it seconded?
Happy to second and reserve the right to speak.
Thanks. I've got 1 or 2 wanted to speak. First one seems to be David Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. I actually agree with the whole of this motion, although I am going to propose an amendment, and I'm also, which I have already discussed with Councillor Cupid, so hopefully it will be accepted as a friendly amendment, but also taking into account what the monitoring officer has just said, I'm going to try and cover council's back as well with a second insertion, if that's possible. So, firstly, to address the monitoring officer's concern, I would suggest between the words objections to the proposals and that we then insert based on existing information as additional wording. That should actually cover that back. But then the actual change that I've discussed is to remove the words pursue an alternative, and that instead we have urging them to consult on alternative options as mentioned in their strategic assessments. And then all the cards are on the table. Everybody who is being consulted can consult on all the options, and we're not cutting off noses to spite faces if this does turn out to be the least bad of the options that are available. So that's the actual amendment that I would suggest to council.
Is the amendment seconded? Yeah. Next, I don't know whether I've got to ask Charlotte whether she would accept the amendment.
Chair, I think I'm happy to accept the amendment in principle, although it'd be useful if you could just read out that, noting the monitoring officer's concerns. I think we're trying to accommodate that and eager to accommodate that so that the council isn't prevented from speaking in the future. But equally, I think we need to make sure that if the council supports it, that we are clearly registering our objections. So I don't know if you could just read out the...
Yeah, could you read it again for clarity, please?
It's showing us Helen at the minute.
Oh.
Right, thanks, Chair. Right, so the final paragraph, if I read the whole thing out as it would stand, would be, Council therefore resolves for the Managing Director to write on behalf of the District Council to National Grid outlining this Council's concerns and objections to the proposals based on existing information and urging them to consult on alternative options as mentioned in their strategic assessments.
Thanks for that. I think we've got that. Who wishes to speak next? Is it Helen? Helen Witherell.
Oh, it was Nigel.
Oh, my screen didn't show it.
Because it switched me off. Thank you for your support.
Sorry, I'll call on Nigel. I'll call on Nigel first, sorry, and then Helen. Thanks.
Are you all right with that, Ellen? I wear up first, I wear honest. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting... I'm trying to get my head around that amendment, but I don't think it alters the sentiment of what you're trying to do. And I'm affected by this, as it did, like you said, it goes through Wingfield, and I've had, so I'm aware of the concerns and the objections and about the proposal all along the route. I've had the emails like most of us, and whilst this is a national upgrade, it's really critical to the national infrastructure, and so its success is vital to the well-being of the country, including residents of North East Derbyshire who are not affected by the route. It's important that the views and concerns of those local communities are heard as part of this consultation. That is, after all, why an informal consultation is taking place and why the process has got multiple stages. I know Charlotte has brought this probably motion in the best interests of her constituents and invites us all to vote for it based on her contribution. And I don't think the amendment alters that, but it does leave me a bit perplexed or a bit wondering, like, really, because she's a leading member on the county council, which is on the cabinet. Alex is on the cabinet. I think Councillor Rennick is on the cabinet, and I think she's got responsibility for planning. So that clearly have a power to influence these events at the county council on issues that they believe to be important. So you would expect county council to be following this route. Yet, at the council's meeting last week, there were no motion to oppose this proposal. How can that be? I do understand that the county council will be submitting comments to the national grid, so it seems reasonable to assume that that response will be objecting to the proposal, at least insofar as it affects that area. But it seems not. I understand that one thing that the county council has said it will not do in its submission is to object at this stage. Why? Because the advice of its professional officers is that to do so will be premature, because this is not a formal consultation, one of a preferred route. That is the very same advice that I received from Sarah that you've just had. So if this council were to make a statement objecting, I'm advised that it is said to be fettering its discretion. There you go. That's it. By forming a fixed view at early stage in the proceedings. I also think it's worth noting that Conservative colleagues at Amber Valley and Henry Wash have submitted not similar resolutions. I also understand that last week Amber Valley meeting, the proposer withdrew the motion following advice from the council's monitoring officer about the implication it would have on its council, similar to what you've just said. I also think it's important that I remind council of the principles of good governance and decision making that we should abide by. That requires that members take professional advice from officers before reaching a judgment and taking a decision. Yet we're being asked to vote on this issue without any advice from officers of this council. Has every member in this room read the consultation document in full and know what the various possible options are? Does anyone understand the various stages of the process? Who takes the final decision, or what the role of this council is? Are we sure that we are capturing all of the concerns that affect the different options being consulted on? I therefore want to propose a different course of action that I think meets the intention of this motion, but does not risk fettering the future discretion of this council. Firstly, and I think we have asked Councillor Cuby to withdraw it, and I think the reply is that she won't. But I do believe this council has got a responsibility to help the interested residents ensure that their concerns and objections are made known to the national grid, so that they can be properly taken into account. I am therefore proposing that we convene a meeting before the end of the month to which all members whose wards are affected by this proposal are invited. That way we can make sure that officers capture all of the concerns and objections together with the reasons and any evidence behind those views. I will also invite County Council member with the responsibility for this issue, together with their officers, to meet with this council to discuss how we can work together on responding to this stage of the proposal along the route that affects North East Derbyshire. That, I think, is a better way forward and better serves both this council and all the people that we represent. So that's our thing, that's where we are, and as it stands, we don't think we can ask the Managing Director because it fetters our position. Thank you.
Thanks for that, your proposition. Obviously, we've got the motion and amendment, so we're going to carry on discussing that. And on the sideline is your offer of convening a meeting of members in the coming weeks to discuss this matter. So I'm going to carry on and ask Helen if she wants to comment on this.
There you go.
Am I on?
It's going.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Cupit for bringing this motion forward, which I support, and I'd also like to thank the Leader of the Council for his offer, and I'd like to say, can we do both, please? So I don't think I have ever come across such strength of feeling from both councillors and local community members, and I need to declare an interest because I'm been part of those meetings with local residents. I believe that graphic over there is Ogston Reservoir. Potentially, the bottom of these pylons would be only on that visual there. These things are as high as cooling towers. They are massive. And I do believe we need transmission of energy up and down and across this country. There is absolutely no doubt. Fully support GB Energy and all the initiatives that the new government is setting out. But I think we need a balance, and there are cost-benefit analyses to be done. And I think cost is not just financial costs, but the cost in quality of life and visuals and what we hold dear in North East Derbyshire. And the vistas that we have in North East Derbyshire are what lots of us hold dear. So I do support this motion with the amendments, and I also think that it's not just about alternatives in terms of route, it's alternatives in terms of technological solutions. I fear that we have the option here of using 19th century technology to address a 21st century challenge that we've got. There are other technological solutions that we have. We have the best universities in the world who are working on some fantastic solutions which do not involve putting up massive iron structures that are 200 feet high across a vista that we're celebrating over there in the corner. So I do support the motion, but I also would support and would attend a meeting if it's one or the other. But I would like both those options to be considered. And thanks to Councillor Cupit for her motion and for her explanation. But again, I would say, do not underestimate the passion and the determination of these communities to actually prevent this from happening and for alternative solutions to be delivered. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Alex, next.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I've written it down, fettering our discretion. It's a great phrase, that. I'm going to take that away and use that next time I don't want to answer a question, because it's brilliant. I mean, the other way of saying it is basically sit on the fence, in my view. I don't buy into this argument that we fetter our discretion at all. I think residents rightly expect the district council to take a view on such things that affect the district, and I don't buy the idea that if we object now, we can't change our view at a later stage. And I certainly don't buy the view that National Grid wouldn't engage with us regardless. Even if we did object, they would have to come to us. We're a statutory consultee and we would have to work with them regardless. There's plenty of examples where groups and councils have objected to HS2. It wouldn't have stopped HS2 limited dealing with those councils. So I just don't buy the argument at all. I think it's really for the birds there. I think, you know, our residents rightly expect us to take a position. We should use our influence. We are an influential council, and we should use that. So I think it's important that we do. And I think Charlotte will cover the comments on DCC, but my understanding is that we are objecting. Clearly, it didn't make it to the full council meeting. We did have something else going on at the moment that there was a deadline for submission of motions that I think we're all aware of. But my understanding is that DCC will be objecting. So I think this council should too. And as others have said, there's a real strength of feeling in our community. It doesn't affect my ward directly at all, but you know, we're here to represent the district as a whole, and we should start as we mean to go on and make our views known to National Grid, because that's the best way in the early stages of trying to seek and influence changes. So that's where I'll be voting.
Thanks for that, Alex. Kevin and then Ross.
Yeah, this affects me both as a district and a county councillor. And in that first, as a county councillor, I've already spoken to the officers at Matlock and made my position clear, or at least the view of my constituents, which both oppose it, but they are contradictory as well. And certainly from the conversations I've had, it was made clear to me that the county council wasn't going to oppose it. It was going to put those comments on. And I've had that conversation on more than one occasion. So if it's going to change, hopefully I'll be told about that, and I can then go back to the officers. But I hear what Councillor Dale says. He doesn't buy the legal advice of the monitoring officer, which I find slightly worrying, because that is her legal advice. It corresponds with what I was told at the county, but I accept you should know more than me, since you're on the cabinet. And it corresponds with what Amber Valley seemed to have been advised as well. And we're taking a big leap of faith if we accept what Councillor Dale and others have said, is that is not the legal position. This is a multi-stage process, and I understand it. There will be a part of that stage where we can object, we can take a formal view, but that's when we have the formal consultation with a definitive route to comment on. If we take that view now, we may fetter our discretion, and it's a well-known legal term. Any lawyer will be familiar with it. And why would this council want to do that when we've got an alternative way of doing it that captures everything that is in this motion? I haven't gone through today, and I don't propose to go through today, all the issues that my residents have raised with me. But I want those communicating to National Grid. Hopefully the county will do it. I would like this authority to do it. But where's my forum for doing that? It's not here. And that long list of wards, there must be, 15, 20 of us that are potentially involved. This is not the meeting to do that. Let's sit down with the officers. Let's tell them what our constituents' views are, because I want those views heard. I think that some of the stuff I've been given and told by my constituents are genuine concerns that should be taken into account. And it's important that we do it in a proper way, not just on the hoof here. And therefore, I can't support the motion. I think the risks are too great, both for this council and for the people we represent. Because if the advice we're given is correct, and then a new route comes along and we can't then comment on it because of what we've done today, we don't do the people we represent a service. And therefore, if the Tory group want to continue with this, then I will have no choice but to vote against it. But I will use every avenue I can to make sure that my constituents' voice is heard, because I think there is some merit in some of the things I've been told.
Thanks for that, Kevin. Ross, turn now.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Gillett's still debating the original motion while the rest of us are on the amendment, because the amendment actually puts the caveat in that it's based on existing information available, so that in future the council could change its position. If the information changes, i.e. all the other routes are not viable, then clearly we're left with the existing route that they're currently consulting on. So we're going to have to go down that route, and I presume the council would at that point support it even if we objected now. So that's the point about the additional line based on existing information. And I think it might be useful to members if the monitoring officer could clarify whether she would be happy with them extra words to stop us fettering whatever we were fettering a minute ago. Does that do enough to allow the council to change its position in future without being predetermined on a position now? If so, then what Councillor Gillet's just said will not count, and I presume the Labour members would therefore support it, because it opens up a wide range of options then that are in the strategic plan of the National Grid consultation. So it actually allows residents to look at all the options and the information available, and then people can take an informed decision on which one is best based on financial practicalities, you know, what's ideal for the sort of energy that's being transported, that sort of thing. So I think actually it's good that we open up the options, but if the monitoring officer could just clarify the point on the legal issue, I think it would probably be helpful to members.
Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst it certainly helps, it's the use of the word objection that is the problem. Raising the issues of the residents in detail is not an issue, is not a problem, but actually coming out and saying you object may cause problems. And I didn't say would, I did say may. And it may come back to bite you later on.
Thanks for that clarification. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. My view is that I take on board what Councillor Barker was saying, that other councils haven't said anything at this point, and I understand the reasons for that. But one of the things I've felt very strongly about is that in our second tier of government, we have a vital role to play in representing grassroots views. And North East Derbyshire, as a council, has, in my view, a responsibility to represent those views, rather than waiting for county council or for our neighbouring authorities. We should lead the way in raising some concerns, and also, if we hear any positives on the other side, raising those too. I think for me there's no time scale on this motion. It's, in my opinion, not for saying we have to do this immediately, today, in the next few days. We could take a course of action in the way that you've suggested, Councillor Barker, which is have the meeting, and then after that meeting, put the motion together with the meeting that then follows, that raises concerns or issues that arise from that, rather than objections, because I take Mrs Sternberg's comments extremely seriously, and I think we should all listen to those very, very seriously. Take out the word objections and have issues that arise from this that we then share with the National Grid, because I think the National Grid would engage if they know what the initial worries are of residents. If they're a responsible company, they'll want to listen, because then they can either sort it out, explain it, or get it right, amend, do whatever. And I think that's an important part of the process, because we all want to preserve the beauty of this district. Not just because it's about tourism or anything like that, it's about well-being, it's about people's lives, it's the community that everyone lives in. So I think that's really important. And also to try and find out more from National Grid, what are the alternatives to pylons? In this 21st century, I can't believe that there's no alternatives. When we all know that energy has to happen, we all need it, what are the other ways of dealing with this? Because I think the word pylon used to be something we all did at school. And perhaps it should be going back to those days and left at in the schoolyard and nothing else. But I think that's my way. By not having a timescale on this motion, we can actually be pragmatic, drop the word objections, talk about it being about issues, parcel all these ideas up together, and in due course, in the informal stage, share some thinking with National Grid. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that. Are you suggesting that the mover, Councillor Cupid, withdraw this until a meeting has been convened with members to discuss it and then bring it back?
Not necessarily, Chair, but perhaps take out the word objections and just put considerations.
We can amend our amendment.
Chair, I'm happy to accept that as an amendment to the amendment, if that helps move things along.
So there's been a further amendment moved by David Hancock that this final paragraph takes out the word after outlining the council's concerns and to withdraw the words and objections. That's what you're adding on, David Hancock?
I'm happy to accept Councillor Thacker's amendment into the amendment, yeah.
Right. Thanks for that then. So we've had another small amendment to it, which I think is useful. The next person who was looked as if they were wishing to speak was Frank.
I'm going to wait till we've voted on the amendment to then raise my point separately. Martin has probably brought up next.
Okay then, and the next one's on the list, Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to sort of reiterate, this is a national significant infrastructure project which will be decided by the Secretary of State ultimately. This is a stage 1 consultation, and I think it's now we have to put our objection in, because we are specifically asking, you know, the proposal is actually for a route which is overhead, probably the cheapest route to deliver for National Grid. What we're saying is that we need to look at the alternative routes, which might be underground. I know that's probably a lot more expensive, but I think it's getting our objection to this initial route in now. I think if we wait, then we miss that chance to show our objections at this point, at this route. And I would be unhappy to see us miss that first chance at stage 1.
Thanks for that then. I've got Jane wishes to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was sort of going along with Martin to start off with. I think the meeting with, you know, the National Grid and everything should take place before we do this motion. That gives us the right information we need in order to work with our constituents to get the right way to go forward. So to me, like, there is no time frame on this. Nigel offered us to get a meeting together before the end of the month in order to progress stuff. And I think that's the way we should be going. So for me, at this moment in time, I can't go with this motion, but I'm happy to go with something of a meeting between them and then bring this motion back to the next council so that we can move it forward from there.
Thanks for that. Frank.
Yeah, I know I said I wasn't going to, but it feels that we're going around in circles a little bit here, and that ultimately these two motions do need to just combine. We need to have a meeting to get these ideas across, to represent our residents properly and fairly, and to make sure that anything we do put forward to the National Grid represents everyone fairly, and that's the best way of doing that, that's the best way forward. So I would urge the proposer of this motion to consider the offer by the Leader of the Council to bring these motions together, to have a meeting of the representatives of the wards most affected by this, and make sure that our communication back to National Grid is as good as it can be. This is an incredibly nuanced problem, something we have to deal with carefully and with consideration. We need to deal with our energy very, very carefully, making sure that we are representing people fairly and protecting our environment at the same time. It's crucial. I welcome the motion that's been put to Council. Do not seek to hinder it. I just want to improve it and make sure that we do have residents' views front and centre of anything we do put forward to the National Grid. I welcome Councillor Cupit as well outlining that this wasn't an attempt to undermine sustainable energy or infrastructure, but I see no reference to that in the motion. It does reference secure energy supply, but I do wonder if that could be perhaps made a little bit more robust, a little bit clearer, that this council does want to see sustainable, renewable energy, because that is ultimately what the National Grid are trying to do, and I think that we should reference that in our motion.
Thanks for that. I don't see myself that the offer from Nigel was a motion. I think it's an offer, and I presume it would probably still stand, and it probably would still convene a meeting. So I think that's on the sidelines, and that will happen. It's not a motion. So we're still with the original motion and the amendments. So unless anybody else wants to speak on it, I'll ask Charlotte to come back on it.
Yeah, Chair, so thanks for that. So coming back on the amendment, I think taking into account everything that's been discussed and said and the range of members' views, I'm happy to accept the amendment, so therefore I understand we don't need to go to a vote on the amended motion, and it will become the substantive motion if Councillor Dale is as well. I think in terms of the meeting offered, I think it's sort of offering a different thing, and I think we need to separate that out, because as a couple of members have highlighted, actually here today what we want to do is send a message on behalf of the District Council. It's not about sending individual ward member messages or compiling those. If some members want to do that as well, that's brilliant. But actually, every resident can submit a view, and every councillor can submit a view, and I would urge them all to do that. This is about, as Councillor Thacker put pretty perfectly, actually, that it's about representing our residents and reaching a district view at this stage of there are a lot of concerns about this route. I'm happy to remove objections based on the consensus in the room, but it's about highlighting those concerns, not about having a members meeting outside of this and then forwarding them on as individual members' views, which I think is sort of what you're saying, and that's great, because for some members, you know, who might not want to put a full submission together, that's absolutely fine, so we'd welcome that. But in terms of this motion, this is about the council reaching a decision. Just to touch on a couple of additional points that have been raised during the debate. To be honest with you, what the County Council are going to do, and there are further meetings of the County Council before the consultation date closes, is a separate matter, and that's taken up separately, and I'll leave that to my Cabinet colleague at County to raise that, and I'm raising that with my other hat on. But for me, this is about what this council is going to do, and there are no other, in terms of deferring the motion, there are no other council meetings before the September deadline of this consultation closing. It was only because of the general election this was extended, which enabled me to put this forward. So would urge council to support this, and happy to support the amendment in full.
Thanks for that. So I put to council that the motion, as amended, we will have a vote on it. Does anybody wish it to be read out again, the amendment? Or have we all written down what the amendment was? Yeah. So I'll ask you to vote. Who's those in favour? Oh, I think we'd better do it electronically. Yeah. So I'll ask you to vote on the system for or against the motion. Sorry, microphone's off. It appears that the vote says 14 for the motion, 23 against and 1 abstention. So the motion is lost. Thank you, Council. Right, the next item on the agenda is item 11, Chair's urgent business. To consider any other matter which the Chair is of the opinion should be considered as a matter of urgency. I don't have any matters of any urgency, and so I will close the meeting. I will say whether the meeting's been
streamed. Do you want the streaming to finish now?